So we're talking about Patreon. Go ahead and get into that.
Let's go back to the beginning. So for people who don't know what Patreon is a subscription service to where creators can create content and then their subscribers donate to them monthly. It's basically a crowd sharing or crowdfunding type platform. Notice the word platform. So what happened was a YouTube content creator named, his name on YouTube is Sargon of Akkad. His real name's Carl Benjamin.
Sargon of Akkad. We'll put that up on the...
Yeah. And
he's great.
He's great. And you may not always agree with him, but the guy is smart. He's smart and well thought out. And I've seen people try to take down his arguments, and they always end up kind of falling short because their bias shows against him. So this guy was on a podcast that was not his own creation. It was somebody else's podcast. It was not Patreon content. It was not YouTube content. It was this own independent podcast. And he was being attacked by alt-right people. And in being attacked, he was trying to offend them by calling them the racial slur N-word, right? And basically, like, you think these people are bad. You're being them. You're being what you think they are. And he used the word a couple of times. And Patreon, after being notified that this had happened, banned him. Now, their policy says hate speech on the platform. There's nothing about...
If he's on another show.
Something that's not Patreon funded. But Patreon quickly banned him, and so a whole ruckus started, a whole saga, because he's a fairly powerful figure, and a lot of people came up behind him and said, this isn't looking good, because Patreon also banned Milo Yiannopoulos because he had some maybe connections to the Proud Boys, some distant connections, which, again, that's a non-platform thing. James Alsop, and I'm not even defending these people. But there seems to be a slant on which way Patreon is.
That's kind of the norm in bigger companies.
Which
I think they're influenced, and we want to. I do want to say it's not. People will say, "Well, by you not supporting, aren't you taking away their free speech?" No, I'm not looking to shut them down. I'm just not going to support them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
But don't look for me to support it. So I'm not looking to shut you down.
And I would go one step further and say that free speech is something that's guaranteed by the government, or should be, in terms of relation with the government. Now, your money...
it's a right protected by government,
yes,
because it's God-given, so it's not guaranteed, it's protected. Should be.
Protected by government. However, you don't have to make an economic transaction with somebody if you don't agree with what they say.
That's exactly it.
That's not ending their free speech. That's really giving your own free speech.
It's actually supporting their free speech.
Yours.
Yeah, it's supporting them, because you can still do it, dude. Like, I don't care. If you want to be left-leaning or right-leaning or whatever you want to do, however you want to play the game, you do your thing. I'm just not going to support it. But by all means, have fun. That's free speech.
Yeah. And one of the complaints that came out was, look, if you want to do this Patreon and you want to police what everybody's doing everywhere, okay, but that's got to be part of your policy. And I think that's the strongest argument is, look, this wasn't part of your policy. Your policy was just part of the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this has been an effort for a while. Do you remember the Lois Lerner, the IRS, not giving the 501c, 501c3s to kind of conservative religious nonprofits, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Never really tried. That's just illegal, dude. That's flat out. You want to talk about discrimination? You want to get mad when your government officials are doing it and you're not willing to take them to trial, and liberals should be just as mad, because if it was a conservative doing it or someone who wasn't left-leaning doing it to liberals, I would be just as offended. Why are you trying to say, listen, if you have to force someone to be silenced, right? Mm-hmm. That means you can't argue against them. That means your reasoning isn't as strong as theirs, so you have to ban them.
Yep.
That doesn't make sense, right? Like, churches like the Westboro Baptists, let's just go with this example, right? They're terrible how they protest. Like, they can do it, like whatever you want to do, but I don't agree with them. Mm-hmm. They're extremists. They're straight up extreme. I don't believe the conduct that they carry is Christian because of how they do it, right? It's not done out of love. It's not loving your neighbors yourself, right? And Christ was not sent in the world to condemn the world, says in John 3:18, but that the world through him might be saved, right? That's the point. So condemning people does nothing. Showing them salvation, acknowledging their sin, showing them salvation is what we're after, right? Yeah. They can do that, right? All day long. My alternative is don't be like them. Show them the Christ of the Bible, right? It's shutting them down doesn't work, right? Me trying to force them is doing exactly what they're doing. How does hate drive out hate? Martin Luther King said that.
Yeah.
Hate doesn't drive out hate. Only love can do that, right?
If you think about it in your personal life, if somebody wrongs you, let's say they punch you in the face, you decide you're going to respond. Right. You're going to punch them in the face.
Exactly.
Does that mean they turn around and say, "You're right. Good point. I'm sorry."
Yeah.
9 times out of 10.
What? Actually, 10 out of 10. I
10
don't
out
know.
of 10.
I don't know a person who has ever been like dog like that, going, "Oh, thanks, man. I
appreciate
totally
that.
get it now."
I should not have hit you. No, you swing back, and then they swing back, and then you swing back, and then they swing back. It's the same thing with hate. It's the same thing with vitriol and anger and bitterness.
Right.
Anger and bitterness does not lead to happiness and joy.
Yeah, and there is, in Proverbs says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath," right?
Amen.
But soft doesn't mean pansy.
No.
It just means calm and collected, patient.
Yep.
Thinking it through. Be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God, the Bible says, right? So we have to be very careful on how we react. So in response, if Patreon is going to do that and ban users or whatever they want to do, right? You're only solidifying the case that you're trying to be against.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, the more that you cry out against it, you end up doing the things that you're being against. I'm telling you, you're going to get caught in that.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're just going to get caught in your own trap, and it's not good. And in Psalms, King David would say, "Lord, ensnare them with their own snares." You know what I mean? Like, and he did, and they are. Eventually, it's going to be. It's going to be where it's like you've put so many rules and regulations that you yourself can't even speak. Yep. Eventually, if you continue to do the things that you're against, right? So let's say you're against, certain kind of speech, but you keep putting these regulations on, you end up doing the very thing that you're against. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then eventually, you're going to get so ensnared by all the rules and regulations. If government dominates speech, you eventually will be silenced.
And that's a big argument that's starting to come forward is, look, liberals or progressives seem to be in control of the culture war right now, so to speak, in terms of media, entertainment, all of that, right? They seem to have the loudest voice. The problem is they're looking to enforce all of this, especially with a government hand. They seem to forget how upset they were back in the 80s when the moral right was trying to enforce these oppressive rules and regulations on everybody.
Oh, that's good, dude.
Remember that?
Yeah, in the late 80s, I remember I grew up in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, and we got it. They were on the news for trying to not... the cable companies were offering MTV, and the city would not allow it. And they were going to have a meeting about it, and all the kids were like, "Come on, it's just a music show. It's not going to be bad." Look at it now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Look where we ended up.
And I'm talking about morally. I'm not talking about we should shut them down. I'm just saying morally, not a very good channel, in a lot of ways. Personally, that's what I think. But in the 80s, they were on the news for trying to silence MTV.
And how mad was the left? The left was so upset about this regulation, this oppression, this controlling speech.
Free speech. Let us talk. Blah, blah, blah. Now you're doing it.
Yeah. And so what's going to happen 20 years from now when you're not in control of the moral voice of the culture?
That's exactly right.
You're going to be so mad when they turn around and start doing it to you.
That's right.
If we all would get off this train of trying to force each other to do each other's bidding and set back and go, look, you do what you need to do as long as it's within the confines of the law, and I want to love you to bring you to
that's right
moral uprightness.
Which actually segues into the Chick-fil-A thing.